Swadika, welcome to Be My Guest. I'm Chola Pansarnarula. Thank you very much for joining us. Brexit negotiations have caused uncertainty in the UK's political and economic sphere, including the property business. Today we'll take a look at how the UK's real estate sector is performing, what are the opportunities and threats, especially those looking to invest overseas. And joining us today is Mr. Kim Skevington, Managing Director of Landscope Thailand. Swadika.
Swadika.
Kun Tim, thank you very much for joining us. How has Brexit impacted the UK property sector?
I'd say that initially Brexit certainly had an impact, but I think recently, as the situation has settled, although it's still not clear, as you know, investors have come to realize that there's actually a good opportunity to invest in the UK, particularly because the pound has fallen. In fact, after the announcement of Brexit, or after the referendum, the pound fell about 10.4% against most major currencies, particularly the euro. So we've found that as the dust has settled, more investors are now seeing the UK, and particularly the provincial cities like Manchester, Birmingham, as good investment opportunities.
I see. So what's the current real estate market situation, the demand and supply?
The London property market has always been a bit different from provincial cities. So the London situation has been quite quiet, but it's picking up now. One of the reasons for that is because there's renewed interest, particularly in projects along the new Crossrail line. Crossrail is a large infrastructure mass transit line that will open at the end of next year in London, and that's creating a lot of interest. But the provincial cities, of course, being much cheaper, have continued to attract investors, particularly from Asia. We have an office in Hong Kong that has regular sales events for projects in Manchester and Birmingham, and they're always very well attended, and the sales rate is always very good.
Mm-hmm. So in London, things had actually slowed down during the Brexit crisis, yes. But now it's picking up.
Now it's picking up. I think there was a lot of foreign investment into London, particularly before Brexit, and it did quieten down, certainly. Mm-hmm. But London has always been seen as a safe haven. So investors from all over the world have been investing there for many years, including Thai people. There are a lot of Thai people who own homes in London and traditionally have bought there for their own use and for the use of their children. Mm-hmm. And I think now Thai people are looking at London and also outside of London as very viable investment destinations as well.
Now, you mentioned earlier about the Crossrail line. Is this part of the government's mega project to expand growth? This transportation link, is it in the northern part of the country, northern part of England?
The Crossrail actually cuts from east to west across London. So it was announced some years ago now, but finally it will open, and I can't remember off the top of my head how long it is, mm-hmm. But it does run pretty much from east to west, and it will link up a lot of existing transportation lines within the tube system as well as the railway network. So it's going to have a significant impact on the growth of London property, and of course the ease of getting around London too.
I see. Now, apart from that, I read somewhere that the government also aims to expand to the northern part to become the northern powerhouse economy.
Yes.
What project is this?
So there is a high-speed rail link planned between London and Manchester. It's called the HS2 project. This project is worth nearly £50 billion. The plans are well underway. It's due to start operating in 2033. It'll reduce the current train travel time from Manchester to London from about 2 hours to around 1 hour, so it'll halve it. And this has also caused or one of the reasons why a lot of businesses are now moving from the traditional business area of the southeast of England, London area, to the northern powerhouse and the Midlands.
So the potential cities to benefit from this project would be Manchester,
yes,
definitely,
yes.
And which else?
Birmingham is also on the line, but beyond Manchester, cities are also expected to benefit because they will link through Manchester to London much more quickly. So the northern powerhouse will affect cities such as Liverpool, Leeds, Sheffield, Hull, all these large provincial cities too.
I see. Now, as for the sentiment among both property developers and customers at this point, what's the general feeling to invest in England?
Sentiment is actually very high at the moment for these reasons we've just discussed. And also, of course, you know, the relatively weak pound. I think, well, I don't think, I know, because we're having very regular sales events, that there are a lot of Asian investors interested in the UK, and their number is increasing. I think in Thailand, for example, as Thai property is becoming more expensive, we just discussed before we started the interview about the prices now in Bangkok comparing to prices in Manchester. Manchester, for example, is looking very affordable, and there are other reasons too why sentiment is high, because the UK housing supply is not reaching demand. So the liquidity of UK property is relatively very high when you compare to Bangkok. You can resell UK property relatively easier, I would say, than you can do Bangkok property at the moment. So this is one of the reasons why you are actually seeing a lot of Asian investors, apart from Thais, Yes.
the Chinese as well.
Yes, a lot of Chinese buyers. Again,
Is that the main market, the Chinese customers?
I think the main market remains probably places like Hong Kong and Singapore. Hong Kong people have been investing in the UK for very many years. They're very familiar with the market, and they remain a very important component of the foreign investors in the UK. The numbers of Chinese people obviously growing not only in the UK but elsewhere too, including in Bangkok.
What are they buying in the UK?
Buying a range of properties, really. Here they are buying in the provincial cities as well, but of course they are buying in London too, which as we know is much more expensive. So really quite a range of properties. Traditionally, I think that Asian investors started to buy for their children in particular when they went to school or university in the UK. But we're now seeing that they're buying as pure investment too. So it's not any longer the case they're buying for their own use. They're buying for investment as they would do in their own countries.
We'll now take a short break. When we return, we'll have a look at the returns on investment and also an interesting project that has been recently launched to the Thai investors, Ancoats Gardens in Manchester. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're still with the Managing Director of Landscope Thailand. Kun Tim, you recently introduced a project in Manchester, Ancoats Garden. So tell us a bit about your company and what's interesting about this particular project.
Okay, so my company, Landscope, was actually established in Hong Kong more than 20 years ago, and we opened the office in Thailand about 5 years ago. And our main business has actually been selling Thai projects to Hong Kong investors. And we've become the largest real estate brokerage in Hong Kong doing that. In Hong Kong, we've not only sold Thai projects, though, we've also sold projects from all over the world to Hong Kong investors, including from the UK. So it's a natural progression, really, that we now start selling UK projects to Thai investors too. So we brought Ancoats Gardens, which is the third project in Manchester from Beach Holdings that we've introduced to Thailand. We launched 2 projects last year from Beach Holdings in Bangkok. Ancoats Gardens is a brand new building. It's got more than 150 units. It's 14 floors high. And the starting prices are around 9.7 million baht, or 230,000 pounds for a 1-bedroom unit, which is 46 square meters. We have 2-bedroom units from about 72 square meters at around 13.4 million baht, 320,000 pounds. And we also have 3-bedroom units as well.
I see. So Manchester, as you have mentioned before, it is an attractive market, but just to highlight again, comparing to London, where is it located and what makes Manchester and this project attractive?
I think Manchester is attractive to many foreign investors because the buy-in price is much lower than London. But also at the same time, because of that, the rental yields are higher. Generally, when you have a more expensive property, the yields that you get from renting out will be lower. And in addition, the prospects for capital growth in places like Manchester are particularly high. As we discussed earlier, infrastructure projects like the high-speed rail HS2 project due for completion in 2033 are drawing in a lot of investors, and there is local investment as part of the British government's strategy of building up the northern powerhouse too.
For the price of 9.6 or 9.7 million baht, can you get that in London? A property, a condominium?
No, not that I know of.
So it's basically impossible.
No, it's basically impossible. Yes.
All right, so it's a good price, it's affordable. And
Yes.
if we look at the price per square meter, how much is it in Thai baht?
So the prices at Ancoats Gardens per square meter start at 186,000 Thai baht. The average price is around just over 200,000 Thai baht per square meter. So as we were discussing, again, pretty much similar to some of the suburban areas of Bangkok, or at least Sukhumvit area, let's say, of Bangkok.
If you go on Ratchdamri or perhaps on Wireless Road, I believe it's much more expensive.
It would be much more expensive.
So it's a good investment option.
Yeah.
And by the way, I read somewhere that Manchester and where the project is located, is it voted as the best city to live in as well?
Well, it was actually named one of the UK's 20 coolest places to live in by the New York Times. And last year it was named by the Times newspaper in the UK as the second most cool place to live in the UK. So it's very much a trendy, up-and-coming, entrepreneurial neighborhood in Manchester, and it borders a very large new development called Noma, which is the headquarters for the Co-op Group. The Co-op Group is similar to Central Patina Group here, a very large retail company, well known in the UK. So that's bringing even more jobs, even more potential tenants to the Ancoats area.
I see. Has it become a digital city as well, with big
Yes.
names like Amazon and Google?
Yes, Amazon, Google, a lot of large international companies are present in Manchester. In fact, 80% of the FTSE 100 companies, that's the UK Stock Exchange listed companies, have offices in Manchester. So Manchester very much a business headquarters in the UK.
All right. Now you mentioned about rental yield, and this could possibly be one of the opportunities for investors with international firms there. Do you have any statistics in the past 5 years comparing the yield, Manchester, London, or perhaps other major cities, Bangkok, New York, Tokyo, Hong Kong?
Well, I know from my own experience that rental yields, for example, in London and Hong Kong are relatively low. Low by Bangkok standards too. perhaps around 2 or maybe at the most 3%. In Manchester, and particularly in Ancoats Gardens, we project rental yields of between 5.5% to 7%, and pretty similar figures also for capital growth. In fact, the developer has statistics to show a gross rental yield at Ancoats Gardens of 7%.
What about the law, for foreigners owning a condominium or property in the UK?
Foreigners can freely own property in the UK. There are no restrictions on foreign ownership. There is no foreign quota, for example, as we have in Thailand, whereby 49% should be, or a maximum of 49% can be foreign owned. There are no such restrictions.
We'll now take another break right here. When we return, we'll take a look at the real estate sector in Thailand. Stay with us. Welcome back. From the UK, now let's get back to Thailand. Since you're also an expert in the Thai market, Kun Tim, how attractive is Thailand's real estate sector, in the eyes of foreigners?
Well, thank you for calling me an expert, honey. I've found that Thailand is actually very attractive to foreign investors. As I mentioned, our office in Hong Kong is perhaps the biggest seller of Thai projects to Hong Kong investors, and I myself am over in Hong Kong probably twice a month at events that we hold there, and we always have a very good traffic coming to our exhibitions. So I think there is a lot of foreign interest, no question, in Bangkok in particularly at this time, and that's in line with, of course, all the new projects being launched and very attractive projects too. Also the pricing, which is seen by many foreigners as very attractive, the yields, and also the infrastructure growth that we know is going on in Bangkok right now, particularly the BTS and the MRT lines. And a lot of these buyers have seen the same growth in their own countries. For example, in Hong Kong, as they were developing their own mass transit system, prices were going up very steadily at that time. So they can relate very easily to what's happening in the market now in Bangkok.
So do you have a lot of Hong Kong clients coming to you, asking about Thailand?
Yes, we have a large number. We have exhibitions in Hong Kong, but we also have a lot of visitors coming over here, and we arrange property tours for them. And they're particularly interested in new project launches, and they're very, very savvy investors. They know exactly what they're looking for. As I mentioned, they've bought for many, many years in the UK, so they are also very quick decision makers. And we see the number growing, the number of investors growing, because Hong Kong property, as you probably know, is extremely expensive and out of the reach of many people. So they see Bangkok as a very viable alternative for them.
Aside from Bangkok, where else are they interested? Because we hear destinations like Phuket in the south and perhaps Chiang Mai in the north. Are they interested in those locations?
We've certainly found the main interest is actually in Bangkok, because most of the buyers are investor buyers, so they buy to rent out. I do believe there are many buyers who also buy for their own use, and they may look at the resort areas outside of Bangkok, but most of our buyers are investors.
What about the Eastern Economic Corridor area? Because this is a big project that the government is promoting. We have a number of projects coming up, I believe, especially along Chonburi, which is Pattaya. Is that interesting for you?
For landscape, it's not particularly interesting at the moment. But I do believe there are a lot of Chinese buyers in particular from mainland China who are buying in that area. And no doubt they are attracted by the development of the Eastern Economic Corridor, the high-speed train link plan to Utapao Airport from Suvarnabhumi. Many reasons why they're interested in the Eastern Economic Corridor.
What's your take on the property sector in the coming year, 2019? How do you see the market?
I think it's very hard to predict. Actually, we expected more activity for 2018, but when compared to 2017, I think that the sales have dipped a bit. They have certainly for us in Hong Kong. Hong Kong at the moment is actually going through some difficulties. The stock market is down. That really affects sentiment towards international property purchases. There is also some concern over the trade war between the US and China. That particularly affects Hong Kong again as a trading center. So I think we'll have to wait and see. I don't really have a crystal ball and could tell the future on that, I'm afraid.
What about Thailand? We have our own monetary policies that the central bank is tightening, especially for borrowers, buying second homes. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's obviously a step to stop any property bubble from developing, and in that regard, it's a healthy step forward. I would expect that the financial institutions would know themselves the state of the property market and the safety of mortgages and non-performing loans. So that would be my take on that, basically.
So what would you advise property investors who are interested to invest perhaps here in this region or maybe in the UK? When would be the right time? Because a lot of people are still monitoring the current situation. Brexit is still ongoing. Perhaps the pound will weaken more.
Yeah.
What are your suggestions?
Brexit, as you said, is still not clear. We don't know exactly what the deal will be or even if there will be one. But I think we are seeing investors going into the UK anyway, and perhaps thinking that now may be a low point for the pound sterling against other currencies. But in any case, taking advantage of a weak pound, certainly when compared to how it was pre-referendum. So I'm optimistic that the property market in the UK will remain buoyant, because I think that when a decision is made and all the uncertainty is cleared up, we will see more investment going into the UK property market.
So if you want to diversify, perhaps it's a good time.
I think it's a good time to diversify for that reason to the UK, but also, as we've touched upon too, I think it's a good time to diversify from Thailand, perhaps, as Thai property and Bangkok property in particular is becoming relatively expensive, and Bangkok, as we've seen, now compares very favorably, not only in terms of the purchase price, but also by the fact that you can borrow. If you're qualified, you can get a mortgage in the UK to borrow against an investment property in Manchester, for example. Loans of around 65%. The interest rates are reasonable, around 5 to 6%. So I think that all factors combine to make the UK a very viable diversification for Thai investors at this time.
All right, Kun Tim, thank you very much for sharing your analysis with us today. Sawasdee ka.
Sawasdee ka. Thank you.
And that was a property outlook in the UK with an update for Thailand. Hopefully investors will get an idea how each market is and diversify their portfolio accordingly. That's it for today's edition of Be My Guest. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Cholapansana Rula. See you next time. Sawasdee ka.